View from the Gutters, episode 105. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Captain Marvel, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 140.55. You guys ready?
Yep.
Nope.
Sweet.
Yes.
Welcome to Taxes and Their Effect on People. I'm your host, Joseph Preddy.
I'm Andrew Chard, but this is View from the Gutters episode 105.
Oh, I'm in the wrong room.
Yeah. No, Joe, it's all good. We record Taxes and its effect on people tomorrow.
Oh, I was confused.
Stay tuned for that on Joe and I's new channel, Podcasts to Sleep Through.
It's really wonderful.
I think actually tomorrow Joe and I are going to record View from the Narrow Ledge that I'm shoving you off of. And my name is Tobias Pancha.
Well, that'll be a very short video.
Will I fall on somebody and kill them?
Possibly a very good
introduce
view,
yourself
though.
over him because you're never going to get
I'm
able to
good.
go.
I'm Kaylee Fleeman.
Brant Gillahan Eddy.
And I'm Kate Reynolds.
We have
Yay.
6 people this week.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
It is a full house.
Yeah,
That's because
this
this
is
is
a very
divisible by
crowded,
2.
tiny studio.
6 people enter. 6 people leave.
It's a very exciting
We hope.
Well, yeah,
Dun, 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 dun.
yeah. Barring something really intense. Although I might actually get myself murdered on this episode. We'll see.
Oh, well,
Somehow I doubt
I'm
that.
ready.
Oh, good. We'll go back to back.
All right.
You hold the shield. I'll hold the spear.
There was actually, it's fun. This is funny. There was a time, it was fairly early in our friendship, and Brant, my friendship with Brant, I think you were either getting ready to go to China. You were still at Evergreen. You were either getting ready to go to China or just come back. And for some reason, there was like a week where we were just nippy as shit at each other. And I don't know why. I cannot remember the reason. I just remember we were very snippy with each other.
Joe, I think it was just because you hadn't said that you loved him in a while.
I mean, it could have been
Yeah.
that. I try to tell him every
You have
so
to
often.
appreciate
Yeah, where's
the brand
my
from time to time.
Whitney Houston rendition of?
It's coming. I'm waiting on the gown to come back from the dry cleaners.
Anyway,
We're talking about Captain Marvel.
that's what we're talking
Not
about.
Miss Marvel.
Not Ms.
Which
Marvel.
I constantly
We already did that one.
confused people.
Not Miss
by.
Marvel, which is never a comic book that has existed.
Never.
Nope.
Nope. And not the Captain Marvel that's being published right now by the exact same person who wrote the Captain Marvel we are
And
reading.
it's
More
about the
different numbers.
Same people.
Fucking Marvel, I swear to God. Like, I get what you're doing, like the whole renumbering thing.
Let's stop it.
But stop it.
Just
Maybe stop
Actually,
it.
Stop it.
I mean, I don't get what they're doing.
no.
Like, I'm legitimately confused because I think it 100% works against them in the fact that they're like, hey, new reader friendly.
Yeah, I think that the idea is that it's supposed to be like, this is a chapter break. Like, that this story arc has ended. We're starting a new story arc. This is a jumping on point. It's a new number 1.
But why not call it season 2?
Well,
right,
but I
which is
think
what
that
they should do.
I think that's the whole problem is that the tensions between like the sliding continuity thing, right, and like keeping things numbered because like they don't refer to the breaks in their universe, like they just kind of let things keep rolling
Right.
forward. And they pushed Marvel Now as like the analogy to New 52, but they didn't do it line wide.
Right.
And then so they tried to find places to wedge it in as it fit within the different books, but then they didn't even do that successfully because there are runs where it's like Marvel Now point whatever, the issue 5 of 6, and you're like, this is not even where I'd want you to jump in. So like, I think it was like 2 or 3 different editorial philosophies all being like mixed together, and they were just kind of like, wow, this is kind of ugly. Is everything on Marvel Now yet? No, let's just do whatever that we need to do to get the last of them over there.
Yeah.
And the first Captain Marvel, I think, was one of the first Marvel Now books, so the fact that they canceled it and reissued from number 1...
Yeah, I don't...
But then
get
they
it.
did that with Daredevil, too, and yeah, I think you're right.
Daredevil, was not...
No,
Marvel
but it
Now
became
initially.
Marvel Now, what, 3/4 of the way through that
like
run?
issue 13 out of, like...
30?
Yeah.
Okay, so almost halfway through that run, and then they canceled it when he moved. And I can understand that, because it was...
Yeah, like, and again,
Yeah.
that's a good break. Like, he's just moved, he's in a
Yeah.
new place, he's got this new status quo, it's a good starting point.
Welcome to season
But
2.
you need to give some kind of indication, like,
I like
this happened after that, so that when you go onto Amazon, and you're like, Captain Marvel Volume 1, there aren't 2 Volume 1s that were printed within 2 years of each other.
With the same writer.
Yeah, with the same writer.
About this, yeah. It's it's ridiculous.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
And
it's just confusing.
I would think everybody's talking about how, like, great Marvel's doing in terms of representation and in terms of, like, kind of upping the amount of visible, like, highly visible lead female characters. And that's all great and shit. But seriously, stop fucking people around with new number ones. Like, I hate that shit.
Well.
Because it smacks of fucking, like, the collector's market. And it's like, seriously,
Well.
I don't give a fuck about a number one on my comic. If you want to do seasons, I've always liked that idea. I think it's
Yeah.
a cool idea. If you wanted to do just in, like, 1 of 12, 2 of 12, whatever, and then in a new year you're going to do the new arc, whatever, do that. That's fine. But, like, because these number ones, they all have, like, all new number one, bro. And it's just like, come on.
Yeah, but even
Come on.
Axel Alonso and Quesada before him, like, who have been considered to be some of the most accessible editors-in-chief that they've ever had, have said straight up, like, at conventions, they're like, you want us to stop doing that? Stop buying them.
Oh, well, and
Yeah.
that's fair, but...
So, like, as a business person, like, when you're sitting there and you're like, well, we've got to see change, and DC's getting ready to shake up their whole thing, so what should we do? Well, let's go ahead and issue number
I
one.
see, but that
Like,
feels to me like when Tim Cook gets in front of Congress and says, we're doing the reason we're not paying taxes on our money by putting our money in banks overseas where it can't be taxed by the U.S. government is because businesses exist to make money. Fuck you. It's still immoral.
Well,
It's still
but
coming
it
from a
doesn't-
place
But
where,
in that
like-
case, the analogy falls apart because Congress could fix that.
Oh,
And then
no,
they could
absolutely.
like, you are stupid if you're like at the end of the day, you could be as altruistic as you want, but you're not going to keep your people employed. If every other company out there is like, we move our money to Shanghai, and you're like, but I'm not going to because of crap where our money is gone. Like, you use your
have to make
tools to
money.
lobby Congress to say, can you, like, fix this? We'd be happy to give you back
Well,
our
and-
taxes if everybody else is giving you.
And the
so
thing
what
is,
we're
like-
saying is Congress needs to hold hearings about numbering in comic books.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
Last
so.
time Congress held hearings about comic books, it did not go well for comic books.
But the analogy
comic
here,
book code worked really well for everyone.
but the analogy is like, oh gosh, who posted this? I see these little tidbits and I'm like, I should bring that to the show. But an Image book, I think, is selling some ridiculous amount. Like, it sells more in France than it sells anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets collected into graphics in France.
right.
And so the creator who posted a Twitter about this, and I can't remember his name and I can't remember the comic, and I'm sorry, basically was like, psh, like, maybe that's how I need to do it. Maybe that's what's appealing for my market or whatever. Like, the people who want to read my stuff want to read it and will be willing to buy and condensed stuff. But, like,
And for Marvel, to argue Marvel's side, is it's like they have people that depend on them. Like,
Right.
they, as a business, like, they employ all these writers and artists, and it's in their best interest to, like, help support these writers and artists. And if that means putting out a new number one every 6 months, which allows us to have books that are risky, like Ms. Marvel or all new Ghost Rider or whatnot, that are like, this might not work. Like, this is a departure from what we normally do, and we're going to try it. Captain Marvel's a great example of that. Like, we don't know that this is going to work. And if they're able to sell 150 variant covers of Star Wars number one, and that funds, like, new risky books like Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel, like, I think that's great. And I hate that there are still number ones and that, like, that's the big money grab, but it's going away slowly, I think, because the collector's market is going away slowly still. I mean, variant covers are like the last vestige of the collector's market in a lot of ways.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. It's not...
But they don't need new number ones to make variant covers.
No, they don't, but they always sell for more.
That's
Like,
true.
they're always worth more.
It's definitely a different world than it used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just use this to make a very brief tangent. Kaylee had never seen the movie Mallrats before last night.
Hey, leave me alone.
We sat down and we watched it, and
right, because you were, like, in the first grade when it first came out.
I was 3. I was 3 when it came out.
but at the very beginning of the movie, there's two main characters, T.S. and Brody. T.S. comes over to Brody's house. They go downstairs, and Brody just has racks of long boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what comic book collecting was in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
I had many long boxes in my room growing up.
yeah, like that was how you collected comics, and if you missed issues, like they're not reprinting them. Like
No,
trades don't
you're
come
fucked.
out.
You missed
Like,
that
yeah,
part of the story.
That's gone. And so the collector mentality was something that was necessary to really appreciate comic books.
I've told
and
the
that
story.
has gone away.
I've told the story about buying Spider-Man 252 before on the show, but like I was watching the cartoon show when I was a kid, and I saw the black costume and the Venom stuff, and I was like, whoa, what is that all about? And like went out to go read that storyline, and this was probably in like the late 90s even, and it hadn't really been collected anywhere. The Black Suit Saga of Spider-Man. There were like occasional issues that would end up in trades, like mostly the Venom stuff later in like the 300s. So I had to go on eBay, pay like $30 for a Spider-Man 252, which I opened, read, and then immediately sold. Because like all I wanted to do was read the comics, but you used to have to like actually go physically track down single issues, buy them, read them, and now it's like I would never do that.
Although some now still do that. Like, printed in 2007, there was Superman Batman number 26, Sam Loeb's issue.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until recently that I finally tracked down a copy of it just so I could read it, because it's never been reprinted.
Really?
Yeah, it's not in a trade.
There is. I would say that of all of the trade collection departments, DC's is by far and away the worst. They have no idea how to collect trade paperbacks.
Well, because
and
that
everything's out of
specific
print.
issue was never part of a storyline.
Yeah.
None of the trade storylines have it included.
But Marvel lets a lot of their stuff go out of print, which is a hard thing for
Well, they're
people
basically.
now.
Well, what's ironic that they were bought by Disney, because it's the Disney model, right? Like
Right.
you cycle what you release.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is definitely like the vault to keep rarity in check, and it is for Disney for sure. But with Marvel, I think a lot of it is just like they don't want to pay those creators right now, so they like let books go out of print, and then like when they come back in, then they have to pay the creators again. And some stuff isn't even available on Comixology, which is like a no-brainer to me. It's like you don't have to print those; you just put them online. So there must be some kind of like legal fiasco with something there. I know that like DC won't release any Greg Rucka stuff right now because they don't want to pay him. So like you can't buy a lot of that stuff on Comixology, and you can't get the trades anymore. So that's like a whole different world. But trade paperback collecting's actually become a really big deal. Like Joe has a lot of the omnibus editions of stuff, and those go up in price like astronomically. But sometimes when trades go out of print, like when Annihilation, the 3 trade paperback versions of Annihilation went out of print, those jumped up to like $70-$80 a trade.
Yeah, and
so like you can
Joe
actually
sold his, and now I want copies of it, and they're super expensive.
Well,
Right.
I couldn't find the last trade, and they were coming out with an omnibus.
Yeah, they came
so
out
I
with
was
the
just
omnibus.
like, I'll just buy the fucking omnibus. I don't care.
I don't like
So
reading
you probably
omnibuses.
sold like 2 trades for near the price of an omnibus.
More. Actually,
Yeah.
I did really well. I'm not going to lie. I did really well on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's like this weird speculators market about trade paperbacks now too, which is
But I also don't. I have the Dark Horse published the first 7 trades of Usagi Yojimbo in a 2 hardback edition, similar to the Nausicaa that Tobiah has, and that was incredibly hard to find, and it's going for quite a bit of money. But I would never sell that. It was a gift.
yeah. I mean,
it was a gift from Curbotron. So like, I don't really. It's nice to look at it and be like, that's theoretically worth all this money that I probably wouldn't get for it, and would have to find the right person.
Yeah.
And I would get the money for it, and then just be like, I can't read this. Like, this money it's useful to buy other things that maybe I haven't read, but I'd much rather have that because it means something. It's connected to something.
yeah.
Anyway, we are talking about a book, not about
Yes.
the collector's market.
Well,
Wow.
Talk about it,
we're
Rob.
having the conversation that happens, Kaylee, and also I enjoy the hell out of watching you squirm over there.
Oh, I got a lot of shit to say, and I don't really care about the collector's market.
So Kaylee brought 14 notebooks full of notes.
Yes.
They all have a different Lisa Frank drawing on the front.
They do.
And it's kind of extreme and intimidating, which is why we're stalling. But Kaylee, you
What do you
pitched
think
this
of the
book.
collector's market?
And how do you feel about
I
the
don't
collector's
give a
market?
shit.
Yeah, you pitched this book. So what's up with that?
So I kind of, in my discussion, I'm going to break it up into like 3 parts for pretty clear reasons.
Each chapter has 15 parts.
The first will be like talking about like Dexter Soy's art, and then the Emma Rios, who I really like, and then the Filipe Andrade, who
is the best art in the book. I agree. Thank you.
Oh my god, no, not even. They look like frog people.
Yeah, they look awesome.
Oh my god, Filipe Andrade. I have a lot of issues with his art. They look like frog people. Anatomy is not a thing, apparently, that he has studied.
It's called push and pull, Kaylee.
I just.
When can we start disagreeing?
Never.
Okay.
Is she doing
which is the one that you really don't like?
The third one.
Filipe Andrade, yeah.
Okay. Because I had serious problems with both his work and the first guy. What's his name? Dexter
Soy.
Let's start with Dexter Soy.
Okay,
so bad.
Okay, here's the thing. So I hadn't read the first trade in a little while, and I've never read the second one. So I read through the second one, and I was like, wow, the art is terrible. The art is horrible. The art is so bad. Oh my god. So then when I went back and read the first trade, I was like, this art's actually pretty nice. I didn't like it the first time I read it, but god, if it isn't a breath of fresh air now. So I think Dexter Soy's style is very stylized, and I don't know if it's necessarily the best fit, but I can appreciate it for what it is. And I think that there are a lot of really beautiful panels in it, but I think that movement is kind of an issue, and where some scenes are really static. Emma Rios, I'm a huge fan. Just about everything she does. I think sometimes she has some problems with same face, especially between Helen Cobb and Carol Danvers. But other than that, I think it moves well. I think it looks nice. I think it's fitting.
Do you think it's intentional, the same face between Carol and Helen? Because Jessica looks nothing like either of them.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking, too, because they're so similar in personality. Mm-hmm. Essentially, the only difference, appearance-wise, is that Helen has curly hair.
Yeah. And
Danvers does not. And so I think that there's definitely, an intentional parallel between the two. Sometimes it can get a little confusing because they are so similar in appearance. They're both the exact same shade of blonde. Mm-hmm. They have the same exact face. So when you have a close-up of a face, you have to kind of double check. And okay, who's talking here? Or,
I think Cobb's hair is more white.
When she's old. Yeah.
Well, no, even when she's younger.
Yeah, she has a lighter blonde.
She does. She definitely has a lighter blonde.
Colored the Emma Rios. Issues.
I will look it up for you.
But the main thing I wanted to
Jordie Bellaire,
who is a really good art colorist.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I think fantastic.
What other things has he colored?
Things that we have talked about, I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think he does.
I'll look it up
pretty
while
deadly.
You discuss. But, I believe so as well.
The biggest thing I wanted to talk about, and this is why I love Captain Marvel so much, and I think this is why it appeals to a lot of people, especially a female audience, is sort of this healthy sense of competition. And there is a lot of dialogue in feminism about harmful competition, sort of pushing other women down to make yourself seem special. This special snowflake syndrome. I'm not like other women. I'm not like other girls. I like comic books, or I'm not like other girls. I'm sportsy. Mm-hmm. Things like that. And
that's a word.
Yeah, it's a word. I said it. It's real now.
Yeah.
But I think this becomes a huge issue in how women regard each other, and it's something that, especially in recent years, there's been a big push against, where it's no, we need a sense of camaraderie. We're all in this together. We need to understand each other. Just because you like wearing skirts and you like wearing pants doesn't mean that one is better or worse than the other. It just means that that's what you like doing. So in stories where competition is the focus, or a competitive person is the lead, it is oftentimes problematic. But I think Kelly Sue does a really good job of writing Carol Danvers as a person who has a competitive streak, who has this this healthy sense of competition, and she doesn't put others down. She is competitive because she wants to be the best that she can be. At the same time, she respects others who are different than her, and she respects those who are who surpass goals that she has set for herself. And I think that's like super cool and super fantastic. And it leads to sort of this dialogue that fans can talk about, like the whole Carol core of like, you know, it's okay to be competitive as long as we aren't harmful in it. It's okay to feel prideful or boastful of these things that I've accomplished that I have really pushed myself towards. And I think it's like a healthy role model, I think, of what competitiveness can be instead of what it has been historically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she's competitive with herself most of all. Mm-hmm. Like she pushes herself to be better, to go further, to do more. And real quick, thank you to Brian on the Patreon live stream. Jordie Bellaire is a woman.
Yes.
And she did Hawkeye, The Manhattan Projects, Pretty Deadly, the recent Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey's Moon Knight.
Yeah. He also did She did the Cullen Bunn Magneto. She's colored 439 issues, including most of the Manhattan Project. Notably, ones we've talked about are 3, which was the most recent one I think that we talked about.
Yeah, a lot of Image stuff.
Pretty Deadly.
See, I it's funny that I forgot that it was Emma Rios who was doing those middle issues, because I've come across Emma Rios's Rio. I don't know how you'd say possessive with Rios.
You don't. When it ends in S, you can leave off the additional
Right,
S.
right. Well, no, I know that, but I'm just trying to think if that sounds strange.
Emma Rios's.
Yeah, that sounds strange too. Anyway, I've come across Emma's art in other venues, specifically stuff that she's done herself and colored herself, and so I'm used to much more brighter and cleaner palettes. And so Jordie Bellaire's work on top of it felt like weirdly flat and gray, and not like there were colors in there, but like I found myself reading it being kind of like, especially like right after Dexter Soy stuff, where I was just kind of like, I'm not jiving on this, and then switch to the Emma Rios stuff with Jordie over top of it, and I'm just like, this doesn't look or feel right to me. So it's surprising because I like Emma Rios.
Well, especially under
normally.
Pretty Deadly. I like Emma Rios' stuff a lot better in Pretty Deadly.
Yeah,
I like the colors in Pretty Deadly a lot
I feel like it's the
more.
combination of the two, which is interesting because by all rights, they're both great independently of each other, so I'm not sure why the combination didn't work for me.
So sometimes it can just be that way. I mean, my major problem with the series, and the reason that I hadn't read it up until now, because I picked up the first issue, looked at it, put it back down, and couldn't deal with it. It's not just that the art is in a particular style that I don't care for. It's that it really doesn't jive with the style of storytelling that Kelly Sue DeConnick is telling. It doesn't do a good job of conveying the action. You don't get a set, like, throughout all of the artists, I had a big problem with faces not conveying emotion. And Emma Rios was the best of the 3 by a wide margin, in my opinion. And even then, like, I don't feel like the art was necessarily conveying what DeConnick was trying to do with the character or the story. And I think that the series has improved immeasurably since they've gotten some other artists on it. I'm not sure who the current artist is, but I really like him.
Filipe's art, I think, is
you could really tell how they were
phenomenal.
feeling.
I have such a problem with the glommed on like oil paint look of the early stuff.
Yeah,
it looks so amateurish, and I mean that's so rude. It's so rude of me to say that, and I think that it's like I shouldn't say it.
Did he color his own stuff, or did?
Yes.
But it's like it's not that it is wrong. It's just like of a style that I'm not a fan of, and I think that character models.
I really like it.
I think the character models look like so chunky and so like not fluid. And also, you're going to start a new character and tell a time travel story. Like, I think that that's the biggest mistake in this whole book is...
Yeah, I'm honestly not a fan of that.
I disagree with that, actually. I think I think her time travel story is awesome because you experience a lot of who Carol Danvers is.
Yeah, I mean, it's
basically telling her origin... basically a retelling of her origin for newer audiences.
Yeah, in a way that's fresh and interesting.
You know immediately who she is. I mean, time travel is the vehicle. I don't think the time travel story does anything
know who
egregious.
She was.
I don't think it does anything egregious. I've definitely seen time travel. Time travel has the propensity to be ridiculous at best, and very few places get it right. But like, time travel was clearly just the vehicle that was used to introduce people to who this Carol Danvers is, who this Captain Marvel is, and I thought it was very successful.
Yeah,
those first few arcs, after reading them, I had no doubt who this was, who I was reading about, and I appreciated that. And I enjoy this whole run. This is a comic book. It's a superhero comic book. I don't give a fuck that there's not a lot of emotion in it, because you know what I hate in my superhero comic books? A lot of emotion. Like, if I want a lot of emotion, I'll read something fucking emotional. Like, I've got plenty of stuff to do that. And that's not to say that emotion doesn't have a place in superhero comic books. It's just not the first thing I'm never let down when there's not. Like,
I felt like I was reading a lot of talking heads, and I know that DeConnick's a good writer. Like, I've read other stuff by her. I've read her on this book with different artists who I feel like convey the characters much better, and so I know that it's not the writing. Like, I have to look at this and go, this art and this writing is not jiving with each other, and it's not coming across like how the characters are actually feeling, how they're interacting. Like, they're just bodies that are standing there emotionlessly conveying dialogue.
Yeah, and I think that their bodies kicking the shit out of giant robots that just came out of the sea, and like, it feels odd. I feel like we read two different.
But the time that they bring in Monica Rambeau, which is after the section with Filipe.
No, it's before Filipe. It's after Emma Rios.
Okay. Yeah, so it's
Dexter Soy again.
It's Dexter Soy again, but he's using a much lighter hand at that point.
And a different colorist, I think.
Yeah.
That the first stuff, the Dexter Soy stuff, is like some of my least favorite art in the book. But Emma Rios, although I really like Emma Rios, feels like a fill-in artist on this book, because they immediately go back to Dexter Soy, and so it was just like, get the rest of the arc out, because you're not fast enough.
Well,
like, that's what that screams of.
Well, actually, I almost wonder if it was, Dexter, we need you to go back to the well and modify your style, because it's too clunky, it's too whatever. Because I liked the stuff that he did with Monica. Like, I love that.
Oh, no, it's much lighter. It's a much lighter hand. It feels much more airy. The characters feel it feels less cakey.
Well, it's not a different color.
It's really hard to get a word in on this episode.
He just lightened up his hand.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, wait. So the first issue 7, is him coloring his own stuff. Issue 8, the second half of that, Veronica Gandini colors issue 8, and then 9 through 12 is Jordie Bellaire again, coloring over
that's
Filipe, right?
Over Filipe.
So that, and like, I love the colors on Felipe's stuff. So I think it's just a pairing with Emma.
Yeah.
And then I actually, it's funny because Dexter Soy's an artist. I follow a lot of different artists, and I follow Dexter Soy because he does he's got this amazing, it's basically pin up, for lack of a word, but it's like her costume, like, in half, and like half it's disintegrating, like, and I think he was a cover on maybe one of the things. I can't readily here. I'm going to show it to everybody else, and maybe we can post it if.
So get ready. We're going to show you something.
I did want to mention.
But that's an amazing picture.
Oh no, it is. That feels like that is from something.
I can't remember
a
where.
Variant cover.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think that's an amazing piece of art. Like, I think Dexter Soy is capable of making amazing art, but.
Well, sometimes
it just didn't feel right in the first thing. But also, I something about what we were just talking about relating to the trade, the collectible industry thing, is that I think for me it felt like a workshop book up until the time that they got the Monica Rambeau thing hammered out. Like, I felt like there was a lot of very heavy weight, and Kelly Sue DeConnick and the other powers that be that maybe helped influence her process were doing a lot to pack to those first 6 issues. A lot about who Carol Danvers is and what it means and the weight that she has and all of this stuff. And I almost wish that had been chunked out over the first 12 to 17 issues in a lighter way, interspersed with this kind of... Because, like, the thing that I felt like the book captured a much lighter... Not lighter... a more vibrant and full sense of itself when it was the combination of, this is Carol Danvers, she's, ex-military, competitive, has her, the personality that is Carol Danvers, but she exists in this universe. These people know her. She's been around forever. This is about her journey to like really step into her own. And so her interactions with Monica, you know, and like their play back and forth about like, you know, oh, how many names do you have? Or is it really a Warbird binary
yeah.
Captain Warbird binary Marvel talking to me? And she's like, yeah, okay, good point. Like it made me feel like it wasn't just. It made me feel like at that point that Carol Danvers was human. And the 6 issues before it, I felt like there was all gravitas, like the moments of humor were kind of flickering in with Jessica Drew and like interacting with her friend, like all that stuff. I don't know.
It definitely started firing on all cylinders at a certain point, but I think that this actually dovetails with a question that Tony posed
Before
to
we
us
get
on
to
our
that,
Facebook
though,
page. Okay, go
I
ahead.
want to comment on what Tobias said, which is essentially like, oh, he knows that Kelly Sue DeConnick's a good writer and that like something isn't jiving in these first issues and that it must be the art. And I want to counterpoint by saying that Kelly Sue DeConnick distinctly changes her writing style between trades 1 and 2. Like she's a completely different writer in the second trade. And I'll show you why. I want you to count the number of caption boxes
I
in the
definitely
first
noticed
4
that.
issues as opposed to the rest of the series. Because in the early stuff, it's just like fucking caption box, caption box,
Yeah,
caption
I
box.
absolutely
And it
noticed that.
leads, it just breaks the art down. It breaks the flow down. Like it slows the book down in such a significant way that by the time she's able to ease up and relax on the caption bubbles, and you're like, I feel like I know Carol Danvers now. Now we can just get to like, she punches a
Right.
robot and like fights dinosaurs in New York and like everything lightens up a lot. I find that the book hits its stride in that way too. So like I think Brant's kind of right in that it's like it's growing pains on both ends.
But see, I feel as a new reader coming into this that the caption bubbles in the first part is kind of what kept me solid in the story to begin with.
Yeah.
Coming in not knowing anything about her, I learned more about her from the caption bubbles than I did from the art
Yeah.
or the other stuff.
And the way that it is printed, like I could definitely see that. But in my mind, like I would have liked to have seen less caption bubbles and more of who Carol Danvers is illustrated through the dialogue and through the art rather than through the caption bubbles.
Yeah,
Well, and I think ultimately
really
it
agree.
falls into the same conversation that we had about Ravine last week, right? Where it's like, it's hard to get thrown that much information in 1, 2, 6 issues and just be like, okay, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
And like maybe it would have been better if I was reading it month to month, which is often a conversation that's come up for us here lately. But even then, I think that it just, I think it's hard to be like an exciting new paradigm, an exciting new presence in the Marvel universe. Oh, by the way, we're not going to actually be like in that part of the Marvel universe. We're going to go back in time to another, in World War II is a relevant period in Marvel history, but I mean,
And I think that what makes that so hard and why I think time travel was a misstep in that is you have the caption boxes that are essentially being like, this is Captain Marvel, this is who she is, this is her story, this is why she does the things she does, which is awesome. But then that feels like a completely different story to what's happening visually and through the dialogue. And so I find myself going, okay, the dialogue and the pictures are all trying to keep me like well grounded in like some time during World War II where she's fighting giant flying saucer experimental spaceships. And I find all that stuff like really awesome. Just from an action standpoint, and I find the rivalry between her and her idol essentially a really interesting part. And I do really like when they go back to when you see Marvel trying to protect Carol Danvers and like
On Rogue.
yeah, right. And I love the colors during that section that Rios does because it's very like, or not that Rios does, but that Jordie Bellaire does because it feels very vintage, and that's why I like that.
I really like
yeah, and
that
I feel like
too.
that. Yeah, I think that's. The one.
And
I was confused by that scene though, because Helen Cobb is like, she is also getting the Captain Marvel powers.
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to replace you if
Yeah.
you're not going to do this.
Mhm.
And like, when she went back to the past or whatever, like, did she still have Captain Marvel powers secretly like all that time, or did that retroactively like not
no, of course she
happen?
had
No,
Captain Marvel because
That's
she's
what they're
fighting
building-
giant spaceships and
No. She's saying Ellen
Cobb.
Yeah, Cobb.
Helen Cobb. Did she
Yeah, I think
keep
the
Captain
implication
Marvel
is that
powers?
by beating her to the airplane and then fulfilling the time loop, basically that part with Ellen never really happens.
Right.
Okay.
Which is why Ellen doesn't Yeah.
I think it's also implied in the last part of the story that Helen Cobb has a similar brain lesion, and that has something to do with it.
right.
Yeah.
So I think it's something. I think it's a question you're meant to be asking yourself.
Okay.
Right. And maybe that's part of what they were trying to cut off by canceling it at 17 and starting where they are. Is like, okay, we're not gonna ever go back to those beats in the same way.
Well,
Because I haven't read the new one, so I don't know.
I've been reading the new one, and I picked it up midway, and she had like lost a bunch of her memory. And so I imagine that, because that's what they were talking about happening with the brain lesion at the end there. Like, it's going to cause your brain to reboot. Like, you'll heal from it, but you'll lose all your memory. So I expect that happens in issues 13 through 17 of this series.
Yeah.
I call that a reboot.
But going back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, I feel like it's been the case at Marvel for a while that they have wanted their Wonder Woman. They're like standout, our number one female superhero that is a big deal and important.
And it's
And they were
She-Hulk.
pushing Spider-Woman for a while, and it didn't really work.
Clearly, it's Valkyrie.
Yeah, right.
And
Well, now it's
somewhere
Thor.
along the line, they obviously decided that it was going to be Captain Marvel. It was going to be Carol Danvers. And so I feel like they really were pushing for this series to be a success. And they're like, we're not just going to drop this. We're going to work on it. We're going to retool it. We're going to make it work because it's important for us to have a big deal female superhero.
Did you guys read the previous Ms. Marvel run with
Yes.
Carol
No.
Danvers?
I did read,
No.
well, most of it. I don't think I read
Because
it all.
a lot of that book is basically the same as this book, where it's like, Carol, you're a huge important part of the Marvel Universe. You should not think less of yourself. Like, be a big-time superhero. You're an A-lister. You're an Avenger. Like, build them up. Build them up. And I have this problem when anytime someone writes a female character in, like, specifically Spider-Woman, Ms. Marvel, and it doesn't really happen as much with She-Hulk, but it does somewhat, is like every writer that comes on the book chooses to tell the story of like, man, these female heroes are sure down on themselves, like they need to think better of themselves and become more positive. And it's like, wait, when was the story when they like didn't like themselves? Because like Miss Marvel has always been awesome. She's way more powerful than Captain America. Is like a better Avenger. Like, I don't understand why the artist or the writer feels the need to tear that female character down before they can rebuild them.
I don't think it's just female characters. Mark Waid talks about how everybody takes Frank Castle apart and puts him back together in a way that they understand. And I feel like a lot of this, the first 6 issues, was Kelly Sue DeConnick taking Carol Danvers apart and putting her back together again.
But if you
But
read,
also, there's the moment where she's like, "No, I am who I am, and I'm gonna do my thing, and that's cool." And I felt that there's a similar moment in Mark Waid's Daredevil when when Daredevil's like, "Hey," and I've said this before. He's like, "Hey, Foggy, I've been really dark and depressed lately. I'm not gonna do that anymore."
But
I
that's
feel like that's a direct. That's like that's
Mark Waid coming onto a book where someone else tore them down
Oh,
and
no,
building them up.
absolutely.
Like with female characters, it seems like the new writer on the book tends to tear them apart themselves. Like Phil Noto doesn't do it with Black Widow. Like she's falling apart throughout that series, which is something that I really like. But like the last Miss Marvel run was like that. Not this current She-Hulk run, but the She-Hulk run before that was very much like, Jen, you're a good lawyer. You're a good superhero. Like,
You're a
why are you so
single
down?
female lawyer.
Yeah, like why are you so down on yourself? And I'm like, where was the story where she was down on herself? Because
and that was especially alarming because many runs previous to that was all about how Jennifer Walters, with the exception of the one moment where like she killed half the Avengers or ripped the Vision in half and was like, "Oh my God, what have I done?"
Right.
And you should feel bad about that, even though it
Right.
wasn't your fault. That the whole She-Hulk thing was that she was confident. It was just like, yeah, I kick ass. Isn't it awesome how much I kick ass?
Yeah.
It's kind of hilarious how much ass I kick.
Right.
And so then to have it be like, oh yeah, you're right. I guess I'm not that good.
I used
or
to
in
just
reverse
love the
wonder
psychology.
how
idea of
much-
She-Hulk like in like business where in like $1,000 lawyer's suit, like arguing legal briefs and like how tall she's got to be at least like 6'4", 6'6", or
She's a very
something.
tall woman.
Like green with her amazing green hair, just being like. And furthermore, Wilkes versus Harmon tells us that I always love.
Well, that's what I love
idea
about
of her.
She-Hulk is like, not only is she one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe, but she's also one of the fucking smartest. No,
Yeah.
she's not a scientist like Hank Pym.
No, but she's a brilliant legal.
But
mind.
she's
She also doesn't beat her spouses.
she is
I get it.
sure, but like I mean, like, we hear a lot about the smartest men in the Marvel universe, and they're all scientists, and it's like Reed and Hank and Tony, and then
But they're all fucking insufferable, too.
agreed.
They're all
But
fucking
you know,
insufferable
like
pricks.
Matt Murdock, the lawyer, Daredevil, like, he respects the shit out of Jennifer Walters.
yeah.
He's like, yeah, she's a great lawyer. Like, I don't want to go up against her. And when he does, he has to like really go out of his way to make the case. But in Mark Waid's run, if you were like, oh, this is going to be the new fun Daredevil, like, he's not as down on himself. I'm like, when was he down on himself? You have literally like 20 years worth of books to hand me and go,
fair.
when he was in prison and when he was a devil and all of this shit.
He was
like,
brainwashed to be the head of a ninja clan.
Yeah,
He
like-
found out that Kevin Smith was going to be writing him.
and that's what I mean is, like, if I asked you, like, when was Ms. Marvel down on herself, like, there's not actually a book to
Well-
point to.
Well, back in the
Yeah.
Avengers, when they did all that crazy shit with her having
yeah.
sex with her son, I mean, that was a whole, like,
Okay,
like,
that's a-
she's been abused as a character a lot.
But that's
Yeah.
20, 30 years ago, and
Yeah.
writers have come out and, like, really
yeah, torn that apart.
ripped
No,
those
I think
writers
that's
a
fair.
new one because of it.
What were you gonna say, Kelly?
I think one of the biggest things, and this kind of comes from like a history of like tropes and women representation, stuff like that, is this idea that women are self-deprecating, and that in some like even in stories like that where it's like, oh well, she's building herself back up, it's like, well, she wasn't self-deprecating in the first place. Like,
Right.
not everybody needs to come from this place of like self-hatred
Like,
in
that would
order
be-
to be a strong character.
If you told this story with Steve Rogers, it would be such a shitty story, because I would have the same question for you. It's like, when did Steve Rogers not think he was awesome? And you
When
would
he
have
was
no
Nomad?
You had no books to hand me.
hey, he still thought he was awesome. He just hated America.
Yeah, and
had
I,
a-
hate America.
Well, he hated what America had become.
He had a mullet. He hated himself, all right?
He also
Nobody
hated
that has
himself
ever
in
had a
Earth
mullet
X.
has ever loved themselves.
That's not true.
That's
Plenty of mullet wearers out there love themselves.
Yeah.
They just don't like you.
business
Which is
up
why they
front,
subject
party
you to
in the
it.
back.
Yeah.
They're having a great time.
talk to Brock Sampson.
That's right. No shit.
Okay, only Brock Sampson. Brock Sampson is an exception to every rule. Then
But I think that this is a predominantly a story that is told about female superheroes. I've seen it before. I will see it again, and that's sad to me. And it a lot of times, like, I hate to do this, but like, I don't always feel like it's male writers that do this. This isn't a
No.
case of like a male writer writing women poorly. Like, Kelly Sue is a phenomenal feminist and an interesting woman, and I respect the shit out of her. And I'm curious as to why she thought she needed to tell this story.
Well, I think in this case, I don't know if Carol Danvers is so much self-deprecating as she is uncomfortable with this new role, which I think is an aspect of character growth that could be applied to just about anyone when they're taking over like this legacy role and they understand that it's a legacy role.
She's been Miss Marvel for...
Well, yeah, she's been Miss Marvel. She hasn't been Captain Marvel.
But his name isn't Captain. Like, that's what Steve says right at the beginning
Well,
of this, and
and-
I will, like, always forever love Kelly Sue for that, is, like, when Captain America's like, his name isn't Captain. Like, his name is Marvel. You took his name a long time ago. Like, why are you doing this? Like, I
Yeah.
really like that. And a lot of this is Kelly Sue coming in and fixing the Ms. Male character trope of, like, we just name, like, Lady whatever.
Lady Thor.
Lady
right.
Captain Marvel.
And I really respect that, and I feel like it's necessary in this day and age to correct some of the, like, weird problems from the past. My problem is, like, why is she down on herself while
But
she's
I
doing that?
would like to point, like, how many issues does it actually take for her to say it? Like, I'm taking the damn name. It was like what, 1.5 issues?
It's not about the name.
but like, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's not about the name, but it's also about her stepping into that role. Where, like, she was confident in a lot of ways, where she says to Steve Rogers, like, I outrank you.
Right.
Like, straight up.
Yeah.
And he, was snarky and whatever, like, well, I've been trying to get you demoted, But she pretty much out front says, like, not only do I outrank you, like, in the military, but let's be honest here, I'm a better Avenger.
Right.
Like,
and she is.
and so I think it's less about self-deprecation. I think it's more about like stepping into this role that she doesn't know if she's ready for.
And
Not necessarily because she doesn't feel like she can't perform the same functions, but because she doesn't want to take the role of somebody that she respects.
Maybe that falls flat in its articulation, like going back to what Tobias was saying, because the art doesn't seem to gel with that concept very well. Like,
you also have to consider a lot of the shit that Carol Danvers has gone through over the years.
Oh yeah, I mean,
she was in a coma for years because Rogue stole her powers,
Well,
and then
but
she was out in
was,
space.
Then
Again,
she was
though-
sharing a body with fucking Rogue and the Savage.
This
like-
is comic books, though.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
you
absolutely.
literally, you don't have to adhere to that stuff. You can just come in and go, this is Captain Marvel. She's taking the name Captain Marvel now. Steve had to talk her into it. You have that same scene. At the end of the first issue, she's like, I'm taking the damn name. Awesome. Like, I love all of that stuff. And then from then on, you just are like, she's a kick-ass, super awesome, powerful woman. But instead, we got this weird backtracking to, like, her traveling through time, and it took the inspiration of seeing, like, all these women fighters during World War II to, like, really inspire her, and then her mentor to, like, try to take the power from her and be like, you're misusing this. If you're not going to use your power to your full extent, like, I'm going to be Captain Marvel. Like,
yeah, I
fuck
guess
you.
I guess that's something that did feel is that I've read enough stories with Miss Marvel present where her it's never seemed to me that Carol Danvers' problem was I'm not prepared to use my abilities. That's never struck me as a core aspect of her character.
Right.
I think that there have been times, especially earlier on in the 70s and 80s, but even sometimes closer to now, where they've treated her poorly because they treat all women poorly.
Yeah.
But I've still, like, she's taken over the Avengers. She has smashed her way through an Ultron. You know what I mean? Like, she's done these things where I wouldn't think that her like, I could see her being like, I don't want to take Marvel's name because I respect Marvel.
Right.
But I agree with you that it seemed weird to me to be like, but I have to go back in time to really, do I really want to be a superhero? It almost felt like, do I really want to be a superhero? It's like, well,
You've been a superhero for years. Like,
Right.
is that really a choice you have to make? Like, this
What-
felt like the choices of a new character.
I mean,
Right.
well, you can wonder if maybe that there was some sort of editorial mandate coming from above, going like, "We want you to do we want you to write it. Here's the plot." Like,
Right.
she's going to go through time, and she's going to like reconnect with her roots, and she's going to do all these things, and it's going to introduce everybody to the character. Kelly Sue, go, and she's
and
like,
to be
"Okay,
fair,
well, now I have to write this."
She wasn't the Kelly Sue DeConnick when she started writing this. Like, there was probably still a lot of editorial oversight being like, all right, Kelly Sue, like, you're not the huge name that you're going to be in a year and a half. Like, we need to...
I thought it was important to note that Sana Amanat, who just got promoted to director of like new character development for Marvel, is an associate editor on this book.
Yeah. So, like, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff in this book, but I hate this trope of, like, why do we write female characters in this specific weird way? It always has made me uncomfortable. It's why I hate the way that Gail Simone writes. On top of that, Gail Simone's an asshole, but she always writes these characters where it's like, I don't know if I'm ready to, like, step into a man's world. I just need a good cry. And I'm like, what the fuck? You just beat up like 100 ninjas. Like, how is this a struggle that you're having? Like, I don't want to.
I have the same problem with Gail Simone that I have with Joss Whedon, and that is that their feminism feels sneaky.
Yeah.
Like, and not really adherent to actual, like, feminist ideals. You know, it's kind of like this, like, oh yeah, like Buffy. Like, Buffy, there's a lot of really problematic things in there.
Absolutely.
But you feel like you can't criticize it because everybody's like, oh no, it's this great kick-ass female character. And it's the same thing with Gail Simone. It's like, well, no.
See, I don't watch Buffy for Buffy. I watch it for the other characters.
You
Well,
like
yeah.
the shiny vampires.
shiny Van. Spike is awesome. I have a couple of things I wanted to say about this. And I want to be careful, very careful. Deploy
jump in like I
appropriate
do.
brain.
Yeah, just
get
say
yourself
it
in
Well,
trouble
I was
like I
thinking
did.
about what
Get
you wanted
ready
to
to
say.
be punched.
I do
Yeah,
want to say this. It's funny because I always forget. I don't. Many things that Gail Simone has written, I don't care for. My favorite thing she's fucking written is it was like Agency X, which followed Joe Kelly's Deadpool run,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
was
fucking
hilarious.
which is weird. 'cause
Gail Simone is problematic in my mind in the same way that Joss Whedon is problematic, in that I think that the challenge is that they're folks of a generation that are old enough where some of the conversations that are having now were not as relevant, right? So they were forced to do a lot of their thinking and articulation in their own minds or within their smaller communities, right? Like, it's not like the massive conversation that it is now. So Joss Whedon developing Buffy as a character was incredibly progressive 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it is problematic now. But there's a lot of things that are problematic about that concept now, not just his portrayal of women, right? And he's kind of misstepped on that stuff. And so is Gail Simone. But Gail Simone also wrote amazing stories in Birds of Prey and was instrumental in, I think, sometimes making Oracle a relevant character in the DC universe, which is unfortunate because she was also instrumental in basically whitewashing all of that out of
She wrote some Oracle stuff in the Birds of Prey, but most of the Oracle stuff was going on in the backgrounds of like Detective Comics and Batman.
No, I recognize that, but I'm saying that I feel like she had a hand in it. And
the early Birds of Prey stuff was written by I need to look this up, but it wasn't. She took over the second run of Birds of Prey, because the Birds of Prey stuff that we read for the like Stephanie Brown era of Robin, like issues like 39 and 41, whatever we read for the long run, those are written by someone else.
Gail Simone wrote it before those.
She first showed up as Oracle in Suicide Squad back in 89, I want to say.
Yeah, I need to look this up because my favorite Birds of Prey stuff, I think, has nothing to do with Gail Simone, and I think every time Gail Simone comes on the book, she wants to take it in that like weird direction.
See, my introduction to Oracle was actually through Gail Simone's Birds of Prey. Particularly the run that spawned the Birds of Prey TV show. Is the Gail Simone stuff I like.
it's so hard to look up some of these titles now because you have to know what volume you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, so
Volume 1, Issue 1. Okay.
we may have been talking about the collector's
here's where I was like, I need to get my mind.
Chuck Dixon.
Oh yeah. Hey, how about that?
Which
Everybody
is weird
loves
because
Chuck
he
Dixon. All right.
can't normally write.
So, I think the problem with your comment, Kaylee, about their feminism being sneaky is that there is not one definition of feminism. And that is a big problem for the current conversation. Because when you talk about different strains of feminism embracing things like sex positivity, the notions of equality, whether or not certain things need to be accounted for or rebalanced, it becomes very, very challenging. And I think that the modern conversation around these topics makes people want to be able to use very large umbrellas, to build coalitions, and to be able to apply them as broadly as possible to create movement and dynamism and change. But it is the case that even within, and this is the trouble with even aspects of, various religious and racial and equal rights opportunities. Even, you've got the difference between like log cabin Republicans and other gay rights activists. Like the way they want to articulate their notion of equality shows that human beings are a broad and diverse spectrum of people, and that different people have different ways in which they think that stuff should be presented. I know that something that comes up for me a lot in this medium with feminism is the difference between the camp that thinks that there should be a very strong aspect of sex positivity versus those who want to see a lot of it tamped out because they feel like until you've addressed those larger issues around sexual exploitation that are caused by patriarchal attitudes, you can't ever portray someone in a sex positive way that is not feeding the patriarchal attitude, right? So there are these weird debates. And so that's why it's like you can have women writers who do and I think even it was actually Gail Simone who said, like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm going to escape or always succeed from escaping things. Like, she's gotten into fights with people about people who are like, you're not a very good feminist. She's like, well, I'm a woman and I write things the way I see it. If that's not your ideal of feminism, well, that doesn't matter to me because that's mine. Right. And like, I think that's the challenge is at the end of the day, every writer is going to write within their sphere of influence to the best that they can, and that may not always overlap with everyone's notion of a broader concept. Like for me, what felt heavy-handed about the first 6 issues was that it felt like a very big, like, rah-rah sis boom ba, let's bring women to the fore. Like,
yeah,
Carol is amazing. There were women fighting in World War II. Her hero is Chuck Yeager, but a woman, and it was just like almost completely absent of men. To a way that felt like, on one hand, I think that's incredibly helpful. I can imagine any number of people picking up that book, especially depending on their age, and being like, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, so I can see on one logical hand, like, why everybody, or why a large group of people would be drawn to it, find value in it, find it praiseworthy. It didn't resonate with me, though, because I felt like almost too, like, I felt like I needed, I felt like I could almost hear, like, John Williams trumpets playing in the background, and And I'm just like,
You mean
this
like
is a little overwrought for
70s
me.
John Williams
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like now John Williams? Because now John Williams sucks. But in the 70s,
Well,
and
we can
like early 80s,
that,
he was awesome.
that's debatable, but we'll move on. 'Cause we're not talking
I
about
stand
John
by the
Williams here.
favorite.
So, Cade, the
Well,
run
we're
that
not talking about John Williams. We're not talking about the collector's market. What the fuck are we talking about here, people?
Talk about Captain Marvel, damn it.
the Birds of Prey series that started in '99 was originally written by Chuck Dixon. He wrote 46 issues of it. Gail Simone wrote the other 52. So,
52?
yeah.
Whoa, conspiracy.
But I think that
Okay, see, I was thinking of the Birds of Prey stuff that was towards the end of the
Right.
Stephanie Brown run.
yeah, and the stuff that is in the last leg of the Crisis era, the reboot, the renumbering, like 3 years before they relaunched the whole line, that was Gail Simone at the beginning. And that's the one where they literally like beat up a giant pack of ninjas, and then someone's like, I hope these girls know that they can just have a good cry someday. And I was like, how is that relevant at all to what's going on in these panels? Like,
So,
you
and
cannot
this-
write your way out of a paper bag.
I want to address your point because I totally see what you're saying. What I mean when I say like their feminism feels sneaky kind of goes back to my original point about like competitiveness amongst women instead of camaraderie or healthy competitiveness. Buffy is seen as exceptional in many ways, as in like, oh, she's not like other girls. And then you have oh my god, I'm blanking on her name. No, the rich one.
Cordelia.
Cordelia, thank you. You have Cordelia as sort of her exact opposite, right? And Cordelia is like other women. Cordelia acts like other girls do. And I love
is it this
Buffy.
idea that like Buffy is good because she's not a typical woman?
Yes,
That
exactly.
Female qualities
And-
are bad, but she acts manly.
But
and
she
that's
acts
good.
manly. But she has just enough feminine qualities that she's definitely a woman. She's definitely not Miss Man, you know? Like,
But-
she wears her hair in pigtails,
But
things
it also
like that.
gets her into trouble a lot too, because like her feminine qualities of like lusting after like the wrong guy, like that is like a huge part of the trope. Is like she still
Right.
falls into these like romantic female
Exactly.
tropes.
And this becomes like an issue wherein it's like, well, she's strong, but she's a woman, you know, and so she has these fallbacks. And I don't know how much of that is because of the time that Joss Whedon kind of like grew up in and like the dialogues that were going on. I do think that there's a little bit of a sneakiness about it in the same way that like his representation of LGBT characters happen, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we have a lesbian couple and one of them dies because you can't be gay without there being
Well,
consequences.
in Joss
and,
Whedon's
like-
defense, that is every relationship.
And it's
yeah, but I mean,
No,
it
it
just
really-
Yeah, actually, Joss Whedon
yeah, I
seems
guess
to have a
that's fair.
comment. You see, the thing is that okay. Sorry. If we were talk about Dollhouse, I'd be much more interested in
yes.
dissecting the sneakiness of Joss Whedon's feminism. But I want to point out a couple of things. Cordelia is worthless in the first season, and Joss Whedon did create Angel, a series in which Cordelia actually becomes not only one of the most relevant figures, but basically akin to birthing Jesus, among other things. Now, Joss Whedon does have some problematic things. He's also not the only person creating these shows, but
Yeah.
keep in mind that like by the time Buffy ends, yes, Buffy is exceptional, and there's some really interesting conversations to be had about the rise of this tendency in modern fiction around the concept that everyone is born of destiny. People don't just like show up and do hard work. Like every major figure in every show or piece of narrative right now is destined to be the one person who can do these things, and Buffy suffers from that slightly. But at the end of the day, there are many Slayers, and Buffy is one of them. And she spends a lot of her time saying, I am not the only one. Get off your asses and kill these things, because honestly, people. And Willow basically shows up more than once after her lover dies and basically is like, yeah, by the way, being a Slayer, not the only way that you can contribute. If anything, the one mostly relatively, for lack of a better word, emasculated person in the series is Xander, because he can't do anything, but he ultimately proves himself to be like the guy who's occasionally like, hey, you know, we could probably do this. And they're like, what? That's a great idea, Xander. Like, I feel like that series, especially
Which happens like
Is Xander
twice.
the
Oh, yeah,
mean
it happens twice.
sarcasm guy?
but
Yeah.
just enough.
Well, and I think that this kind of becomes like, this is why dialogue is important, because Buffy gets better.
Right.
You know? But I do think whenever I read Gail Simone or whenever I watch a lot of Joss Whedon things, there's always like this sneaky edge, and sometimes I can't really put my finger on it, but there always seems to be this really odd underlying message, and it's a little disconcerting.
Well, I feel
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Tony.
I was just going to say, I think to a certain extent, no one is free from being enculturated with patriarchal values. And it's hard work to free yourself from your biases and assumptions, especially like when you don't even realize that you have them. Like everybody struggles with it. Everybody works on it.
Well, and I think that ultimately that might be the thing that you could kind of put in Joss Whedon's column, is that I think that he, like, and then this comes back to our conversation about Greg Rucka. Were you on that episode, Kaylee?
Yes.
Where we were talking about, like,
Lazarus?
he tends to write... what was it?
Lazarus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, where, it's like, if you're one of the only people who's kind of hammering at it, it kind of seems like it's like, come on, are we really going to do this again? Like, I think that Joss Whedon at least is attempting to do it, which is why I think he got such a big hand slap out of Dollhouse. Like, a lot of people were like, what the hell are you doing? And he's just like, what? Like, I'm empowering. And it's like, yeah, but they're mindless hookers. Like, you still have them being mindless hookers, and you're dressing them up on TV, which means you're as guilty of doing to them what you're saying that you shouldn't do to them because you're doing to them. And he's like, what? And you're like, think about it for a minute. He's like, oh, right. Like,
that kind of comes back to the point I had when we did the Empowered Long Run, where it's like, yes, he's doing the whole sexy thing as a way to show you how it's bad, and it's like, but where is that line? Because to me, that came off as...
You can't make Hunger Game movies and have kids being killed on screen and then still articulate that it's disgusting to entertain the masses by having kids killed in front of you. It's very difficult. It becomes slightly problematic.
There are always lines that get crossed too easily or don't get crossed when they should.
Well, there's well done satire and there's poorly done satire, and just like there's well done homage, and
but even those have
homage.
thin
but
lines.
I think the problem is, and this is something that comes up for our group in a lot of different ways, is those lines are completely arbitrary based on our very crazy mixture of things.
Absolutely.
Like, Chard and I have made it clear that we're willing to tolerate a hell of a lot more stuff in all sorts of ways, setting, style, content, because our lines are much dimmer and farther set out than some of the rest of you. And that's true, I think, is even with these very hard topics, is like, I think all six of us would have slightly different positions on where feminism becomes empowering, or it's not feminism, like sexual representation becomes empowering or non-empowering, and what it means and all this stuff. So, like, I'm with you. Like, empowered seems like you have a guy who's sitting there drawing a sexy girl being like, isn't it weird how we objectify women? It's like, yeah. It is strange.
And it grows out of that to become something more. But
Right.
like, if you looked at Just Empowered Volume 1 without the rest of the context, like, it very much is like, is this the thing
first
that it
three
is?
volumes were very hard for me.
So I'm gonna close the circle a little
All right,
bit. So
do
I think that's the thing, is that sometimes a work needs some time to work itself through those stuff to kind of break itself through, and that's what I feel like happened here with Captain Marvel. Was that first 6 issues was like, all right, I really want to set Carol on this stage. I really want to do this thing. I really want to break her paradigm. I really want to, kind of encapsulate every little granule of thing that I can. And then I'm going to work through and break past that and give her some humor and some confidence and some joy and some... she had joy in the first 6.
I actually disagree with you, Brand, on this because... Well, not on this specific issue, but something you mentioned earlier, which is like... The first 6 issues feel so heavy-handed, and you wish some of that stuff had kind of been spread out into the rest of the series. Like, I'm glad it all took place in the first 6 issues, because once she moves past that, like, the first 6 issues to me were really rough. And I read this in trades. I think there were 2, and then there was some more, but the reboot hadn't happened yet when I first read this.
Yeah, there were 17 issues of this series, and then the second series that happened.
So I think there were
there would be the 2 trades and then a few issues.
When I first read it, yeah. And so reading the first trade, I was like, holy shit. Like, I like this, but it's not normally what I would be reading. And I'm like, I'm not sure why this is blowing up so much. And like, I kind of get it. And then when we get to the Monica Rambeau and she's punching a robot, I was like, fucking finally. Like, she's a superhero now. Like, this is superhero
that's
stuff.
What it takes to be a superhero. You have to punch a robot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, but
if you want to look
can't
at
time travel.
John Byrne's Man of Steel, like, Superman becomes a superhero when he punches robots. Like, it's
That's fair.
That's
I think that's actually
the
written
benchmark.
somewhere.
You can't punch UFOs. You have to punch robots. That's
Specifically, giant robots.
The giant robots helps. The size of the robot helps.
It
because
matters
It's
if they're-
proportional to the size of superhero.
If it was a tiny robot, it would be
How
like
do you
Yeah,
guys
like
feel
anybody
about
can do that.
swarms of tiny robots?
Wait, are we
that
talking about
happens in-
100 duck-sized horses?
Yeah.
Robots?
In Ms. Marvel, doesn't she fight like a bunch of tiny robots in the Kamala Khan stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I think the reason I like the first 6 issues of this, I understand that it's a little heavy-handed as far as kind of like, I mean, I think of it as an origin story, but it's a fucking love letter to girl power, man. And as somebody with a 13-year-old at home, like, fuck yes. That's what I want, because for so fucking long in comic books, especially in superhero comics, women have been relegated to the Miss Male character or the fucking love interest that ends up dead or the fucking like they're never given the place of honor, and when they are, it's always with some kind of proviso tied onto it. It's always like, well, you were good because we let you save the day. And like the whole first 6 issues of this series says fuck you to that. It's like, girls kick ass too. And I fucking love that. And I'm willing to forgive a lot about it because of that.
Doesn't it say girls kick ass too? Like, if you just started with volume 2 of this, say you know who Captain Marvel is, say you know who Monica Rambeau is because you've read Next Wave, and like, you know this stuff. If you just opened volume 2 and it was like, Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau out in a boat, and you're like, oh, this is cool, like, they're joking and they're having fun, and then like a giant robot shows up and they punch it, and it's like, wow, like, isn't it just as effective?
yeah.
But it's good. I don't care. I mean, if it started with that, I'd be just as happy. I'm talking about specifically the first 6 issues of this book and why I don't have a problem with them. I'm not saying that it could have been done in a different way or maybe a less. I don't think of it as heavy-handed, but like, I don't think she had to kind of reel it off that quickly. Mm-hmm. But to me, there's something powerful in there, because what those first 6 issues are saying is like, you don't have to feel less because you are female, right? Like, you can fucking do this. Like, women fought in World War II, and they fought fucking dinosaurs and UFOs, and like,
well, that's not historically accurate.
It totally is, all right? It's the secret history. People have let the wool be pulled over your eyes.
I agree with you, Joe, and I like the first 6 issues. I guess my question to you guys, though, is like, and why I kind of brought up the whole like tearing the female character down before building her up kind of thing is like, what young girl picking up a comic book is thinking like, yeah, I'm less of a person because I'm a woman? Like, that isn't inherent in their DNA. Like, that's something that society has taught them.
Right, but
It might be by the time they're picking up a comic book.
Right,
Yeah.
but my counterpoint is like, if you picked up a comic, say you're a young girl and you pick up a comic and they never once mention that, like, isn't it great that this woman isn't less of a person because she's a woman? You'd be like, wait, there are people that think that women are less of a person because they're a
Well,
woman?
but
like,
at 12 or 13, you've already internalized that.
Yeah.
as a
Yeah,
woman.
I think
You've
that's
already,
become
you don't know it on
internalized
a
enough.
conscious level, but you know it. Because society's been telling you that.
I mean, like,
the
you-
minute
your
you could
daughter-
fucking,
But there's
probably goes through this all the
is
time.
well, yeah, I mean, she does it in different ways, I think, but she definitely we talked about this on Amulet, like, she comes from a place of support, but she still deals with it, and she has friends that fucking deal with it constantly. If you're flat-chested when you're 13, then you're a fucking baby. If you have big boobs, then you're a slut. If you wear too much, it's like, serious. And these
this is
aren't
things
just
that other kids are saying to each other.
Yeah, this
right?
isn't just like fucking Cosmo for girls or like whatever. This is your fucking peers telling you this. Like, by the time you're 12 or 13, and as a young woman, especially in our culture, you know that you're not as good as a man.
And you
Like,
also
you've
have
internalized that.
You also have schools not making girls football teams because girls don't want to play football.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Which
same
is
kind of
bullshit.
Well, it's also like, okay, if you don't offer the football, how do you know that they don't want to play? It's the same like girls don't buy female action figures.
Which is
argument is like, well, you didn't make any.
So how do you know?
Girls
Like-
don't read comic books.
Well, and
Right.
this is what I was this is part of that problem academically and socially, is that there are some girls who are walking around who know that they're equal, and there are some that are not, because it depends on what culture and media.
Oh,
the
no,
families
absolutely,
did.
yeah,
And then
absolutely.
you slide in that this is a classic argument within like various strains of like equal rights conversations from all both racial and LGBTQ transgender or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm not as good about listing every possible iteration, which is that, like, well, here, let me give a perfect example of one that just came my way recently, which is that I was reading this really fascinating argument between one lesbian equality rights person and another. And basically one of them was talking about the use of cisgender as a description. And the other one was basically saying, no, that's bullshit, because the only reason cis would work, applying, some sort of what the stereotypical hetero male sexual dynamic is because you're still giving power and shape to the notion that there is a stereotypical male at all.
Right.
And that if you basically don't put those traits as stereotypes on any gender, then there isn't such thing as cis. But cis is very important for another subset, especially within transgender and certain strains of queer theory, because it's how you articulate the difference between what is stereotypically male and what is not. So it's like those two were, it's just like there are certain strains of racial where they want to talk about the use of problematic language and remind everybody that it is hurtful and do all this stuff, where you have other strains that are like, no, we should never talk about it. If you never tell them that it was hurtful, then they won't care. It'll be as neutral or as whatever to them as it was is when we say it to each other, or when somebody says something else to somebody else, and then you get into these really arcane arguments about, and it's problem because of social and generational, and it's hard to untether and unhook all that crap.
Well, it's definitely I've heard that argument with racism where it's if we don't talk about racism ever, it'll go away. And it's well, clearly that, has a different effect on a lot of different people, because some people want to talk about it and it's very important to their being. And so I get that. I do respect this comic for taking up the arm and being no, look, this is a woman. She is a proud, strong, awesome, confident, amazing woman, and she's not going to let anything stand in her way of doing that. And I like that it addresses it, but at the same time, I'm also wondering, was it necessary for this character? I don't know that it was. I don't know that it was.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was also going to say, I also feel that part of the reason that was in there, it wasn't only for young girls, but for the male readership that Marvel already has.
Yeah.
To show kind of basically a pre-Gamergate view on, hey, guys, women are badass too.
Yeah, and I get it, because there are a lot of men reading comics today that are our age or older, or even the younger demographic, that are yeah, but it's got girls in it, I don't want to read that book. And I always find that so weird, and it's something that Kelly and Allison on Out of the Fridge talk about all the time, is a mom will come in and be I'm looking for comics for their son, and I'm oh, this is this awesome new comic, Ms. Marvel, it's really great, and they're the mom will be oh, it has girls in it, they won't read it. And immediately shoot down anything that has female characters in it, and I find that extremely problematic. And so, I guess for what Cade's saying is just because it's in a book with female characters, is this same sentiment represented across the Marvel line, in which male readers may actually be reading some of those books? I know we read Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel because a lot of people are reading it, but there are definitely some portions of Marvel readers who are very adamantly opposed to stuff like this. And I don't know. I don't want to beat this into the ground, but I think that a lot of the notions in this book are great, but they're not necessary for this book. They're necessary for more of comics than this book.
I appreciate what the book's trying to do, and I like where it's gone, but it was very unevenly executed at the beginning.
I do agree with that.
Well, and I wonder though if you basically had to get it out of the system.
Yeah.
You had to. You're saying it needs to be talked about more broadly, and I think that it is now.
Yeah,
because somebody took the time to do it somewhere.
Right.
And now you can have what I would argue at this point is a subtler commentary in the current Miss Marvel than the opening of this one. This is much more in your face, girl power, and Miss Marvel is much more just hey, I got this thing going on. But I think you can't necessarily have that second subtler execution without those first ones, and I think that's true of a lot of superhero stuff, right? We needed the golden age of ha ha, I've got you, tiny Superman shoots out of my hand to get to the point where you're Clark, how do you feel? Which is why I was giving Joe such weird looks when he's feelings in my comics. What's up with that? I'm you're reading in the wrong era, buddy.
No, I have no problem. I know.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a
come
hard
on.
time.
Come on. I'll fucking
well,
kill
you talk
everybody.
about how much you love
I think
Daredevil,
this comes back to...
Oh, no, I think it is, but I also wouldn't,
There's no crying in baseball.
There is no crying in baseball.
There's a lot of crying in Daredevil, though.
There is, and I love it. I love it for that because
I think what it comes down to is Joe's level of acceptance for a book. Is that if it's a superhero book, does it have punching robots? Yes. Then he doesn't need
That's
the
definitely
emotion.
my checklist.
I feel a lot of the times I feel the same way about superhero comics that I do about action movies. If I am entertained, then it was pretty good. If it was entertaining, and I saw John Wick this weekend, which both me and Kaylee agreed was a lot of fun and a really good action movie, because not only was I entertained, but they avoided a lot of the stupid, problematic bullshit that a lot of the more tropish superhero comics and action movies both fall into, right? And so it's like, okay, you entertained me and also avoided a lot of the stupid shit that others don't. So, like, right the fuck on, you get a pass, collect $200, comic book monopoly. I lost that metaphor.
It's okay,
tired.
don't worry. You're tired.
going to jail.
I'm going to jail. Can I go to jail? They'll feed me there. I won't have to work anymore.
I do understand what you're saying, though, with to meet the requirements for is it an entertaining action movie? It has to have this stuff, and it has to avoid a lot of the tropes. And that is one thing that I do like about this series. It does have some tropey stuff, but it does do a lot to avoid a lot of the things that we find extremely problematic with female characters, which is I don't see a lot of hyper-sexualized poses in the art. Regardless of what we say about the quality of the skill of the line work or whatnot, but for the most part, I find that there are fewer problematic poses in this book than we see in a lot of books.
Can I tell you that I'm kind of curious whether or not DeConnick told Dexter Soy that one of the soldiers in World War II needed to be having a bikini halter top midriff bearing
I don't
tie
know.
on her shirt, because that seemed actually so specifically jarring to me because it wasn't particularly sexualized that I was just like, she seems out of place strangely. But I mean, one out of every however many women would choose to basically do that in
that's
real
actually
life. So
kind of
it's
what I
kind of
thought too.
So I'm like, maybe that wasn't, but I got myself spun up about it because I was just kind of like, huh.
I'm curious as to...
you try and live on a Pacific island and deal with boob sweat.
Hey.
Yeah, it's popular in the South.
Clearly all the other ladies
And
are doing
among gay men, apparently.
I am curious as to how heavy their guns were, though, because they looked... some of those girls look like they could bench 400 pounds, because those guns are massive, which is cool.
But maybe they're lightweight alien tech guns
I don't know.
that are super light.
It was
Your
Jesse
mom is lightweight alien
It was
tech.
bigger than the Jesse the Body Ventura gun in Predator, but they're one arm in it in this book, and I was like, yeah.
Well, when you're an action star, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I had so many problems with the art that by the time I got to the ridiculous guns, I'm just I don't even care anymore. It's all insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I like her costume a lot. That's something that we didn't talk about at all, but this was where...
Designed by Jamie McKelvey.
Right, and this is where that debuted, and so I like it when female characters get to wear pants. I feel like that's nice.
I wish her mask. I wish her mask would deploy more often. I think she looks super badass with the mask deployed. And I get it. I mean, it seems like it only deploys when she gets to high speeds or into space or whatever. Although, why does she need a rebreather underwater? I thought
she
one
needs
of her.
To breathe. She passes out in
she
space.
goes into space.
She
holds her breath.
She specifically says that she runs out of breath, passes out, and falls through Earth's atmosphere.
Well, that's in a dream, though.
Oh, no, that is. But she says it like she likes to do it.
But I could have sworn that at one point,
weird.
because it seemed to me at one point that she basically had all of the original Captain Marvel's powers, give or take, and that she could breathe in space. But I don't know if there was a depowering event at some point in the previous Miss Marvel run or something.
I don't think so.
Maybe she could breathe in space.
But it just seems to me like she's got the Superman power set where she could just hold her breath.
Maybe she can breathe in space because Marvel is from space, but she can't breathe in H2O because that's totally different.
Because he's not Aquaman.
Super different.
Maybe she would actually drown
Yeah.
because of water in her lungs.
Yeah,
as opposed to...
Jeez.
Well, like I said, part of me was just thinking that she could hold her breath for half an hour.
It did definitely feel weird.
But yeah, it was just kind of like, huh, okay, whatever.
I don't know. That was
when she's
under my suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. When she's
ratio.
underwater, she's underwater without her tank for a while. So it could be that she just knew she was going to be underwater for a really long time.
Yeah.
Or something.
Totally.
I don't know.
Maybe
Who
she
knows?
only had it on because it played like elevator music through her her eardrums.
Maybe-
It was
Maybe-
flavored oxygen.
Yeah, maybe it has something
Nice.
to do with the fact that she's under high pressures instead of very low pressures. Like in outer space, that she's fine, but going down in the water, like she has to. Maybe it's not oxygen in the tanks. Maybe it's something to stop her from getting like nitrogen
Or
bubbles.
maybe
Yeah.
Carol
Actually,
Danvers
she does,
is
she
elitist.
gets
actually
the
does
bends.
get the bends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. She does. Maybe, or I was just going to say, maybe Carol Danvers is an elitist and she only breathes pure Himalayan
That's
air.
what it
when
is,
she-
actually.
when she,
I
She
think
just wanted to look cool with the scuba mask, is what it is.
although I had to admit that the other guy's scuba suit was really neat looking. I was like, you should just take off the fins and he'd look like an armored superhero the way that he was drawn.
It's true.
let's get to the questions because we have
Oh.
a couple questions before we move to Rex.
Yeah, well, there was the one question from Tony that I really wanted to talk about, which was this idea of characters undergoing a renaissance. B-list, C-list characters that don't get seen for a while, then somebody takes them over, retools them, and then suddenly they blow up big. And he mentions Hawkeye specifically as another one, along with Carol Danvers, and just asking if we had any other examples.
I know Joe had one. You want to go? Do you want to just quickly? We'll go speed rapid fire around.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought Iron Fist was the first thing that popped into my head because
Totally.
I grew up reading Iron Fist in MCP, Marvel Comics Presents, and he only got like 8 pages or something. But I remember the first story I read, he kicked through an iron fucking girder, and I was like, that's awesome and useful. So when I saw...
Brubaker and Fraction.
Yeah, when I saw Brewbreaker and Fraction doing it, I picked it up, and it's just so good. And it really it brings Danny Rand into this place. It grounds him. It gives him like a basis for his powers. It gives him a mythology. And so when you're done with the whole thing, it really feels like he feels like a complete character and not somebody that, you know, hey, kung fu movies are really popular right now. Let's come up with a kung fu guy.
Have you been reading the new Iron Fist series?
No, is it good?
Yeah, it's fucking phenomenal.
Moon Knight's another example of this.
well,
Well, he's
yeah.
had a couple of series that were really good and
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
well. He's kind of waned off again,
he,
like
he
the
goes,
moon. Sorry.
He goes through phases like the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
He has these like cool, like when David Finch did the art for one, and then this most recently Ellis, and Bendis did one, the Maliv that drew, but he never has an ongoing. Like I don't know why they just give up halfway through like
So
his
I have
relaunch.
this theory. Toba and I've actually talked about this quite a bit. I think that there's certain characters that are universal enough that they basically can carry a book at all times. Like you have enough, they have a deep enough mythology, history, whatever, that you can pretty much find someone who can make that thing tick. So you just have to find the person, you put them on the book. I think there's other characters that function best as discrete. Like they're like Hulk is my big example. Of a character who, like, there's some awesome Hulk stories out there. There are amazing Hulk stories. It is even the case that you've had awesome Hulk stories for like a decade. But sometimes, like, there just isn't the right person around to talk about that particular character with that particular relationship. And I think that's true of Iron Fist. Like, outside of being like, he's a mercenary, sort of, and he's the kung fu guy. But, like, to really get to the heart of, like, what makes pulp interesting and kung fu interesting and all of these things in a world that has all this crap in it, there's just... Sometimes you don't have a person around who just merely manages to figure it out, so don't use them.
I feel like Ghost is an example of this.
Yeah.
How she never has a really long ongoing series.
Because sometimes they're just better fit for single stories. So I think there's a lot. Like I can't remember if I mentioned this on last episode or I was talking to somebody else, but one of my favorite, I think it's a one part or maybe it's a two issue. I think it's a one shot. There's this Batroc the Leaper one shot.
We were talking about this on the last episode.
Which is amazing because the whole point is like it takes this guy, this weird French guy who can basically do parkour, and the whole reason
he does what's his fighting style?
Savate. But I mean, the whole thing is that he can like run and jump and do all these things, right? That's why he's called the Leaper. This character has been like ridicule worthy for the better part of 20 years. And the whole context is Batroc runs into Captain America, harasses the shit out of him, and basically makes Captain America chase him across town. Turns out the whole reason he did it was because the bank was being robbed, and he got paid to basically get his ass kicked by Captain America. And the monologue from Batroc is basically, you know, at the end of the day, I know I can't always win, but how many men can actually still go toe-to-toe with Captain America and get away? And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my god, that character just went from being like a fucking ridiculous, like, haha, he's a Frenchman, he's a frog, he jumps, haha, to like, that's a great rationale. Like, his whole superhero career exists because basically he's able to keep up with one of the most powerful men in
he's
that
like
tier
a great
of power.
distraction.
Yeah, he's a great
which
distraction.
is how they used him in the movie.
Right. Which very much embraces that. So I think that's a good example. Like, I feel like a lot of characters have like those one creative team that manages to kind of make something click, and it's harder to do with certain characters.
I mentioned the Guardians of the Galaxy coming out of Annihilation. Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Rocket,
Groot.
Hell,
Groot.
Nova.
Yeah,
Nova,
was
yeah.
the one I was going to mention after that. Richard Rider, coming out of Annihilation, went from like a goofy second-rate Cannonball, who was a C-list character to begin with, to like, oh my god, one of the most powerful single individuals in
Ripped.
the universe.
Annihilus Inside Out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
that was
put a fist inside him.
We haven't actually ever talked about that Nova series, but there's one point where Galactus is going to eat a planet, and Nova's like, you're going to wait until everyone evacuates, and then you can eat the planet. And Galactus is like, who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah.
And Nova's like, I'm going to tell you who the fuck I am. And he gets Galactus to wait
Yeah.
because he is that fucking powerful.
Well, once he has the full like Nova Core,
Yeah, he
power
has
line,
all
like,
of the Nova Force.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's a great one.
what a great pickup line would that be? Hey, baby, I have all of the Nova Force.
It's,
work
yeah,
with me.
it's such a great series.
I've got
But,
all the Nova Force inside me. Would you like some of it in you?
Would you like-
That's the pickup.
Do you have any
line,
Nova
yeah.
Force in you?
Even the Guardians
Would you
get
like
cycled
some?
out. Mantis, who was Avenger in the 70s, Phyla Vel, Adam Warlock was on there
Moondragon.
for a while, Moondragon. Like, these were all characters that nobody was using. And that Guardian series from Annihilation, Crusade,
Conquest.
the second one, up until they ended it and rebooted it with the Bendis version in 2012, like, that was a great freaking run.
Yeah.
And those characters were not being used by anybody.
No, and you know why that run ended is because Bendis needed to use Nova on Secret Avengers for 4 issues and then decided not to use him anymore. So he ended the Cosmic Universe.
Oh, God.
Good job, Bendis. I am going to talk about a Bendis book, though, as far as a character reboot. I'm going to say New Avengers Breakout. Because Avengers basically sucked until Avengers Disassembled. Thank you. I was gonna say Deconstructed. I was like, that's not right. Disassembled came along and was like, end the old numbering, get rid of a lot of these characters that are not super relevant anymore, like Jack of Hearts and the Vision and Scarlet
How
Witch.
dare
is
you
gone,
say
and
Jack of Hearts isn't relevant?
most people don't even know that he was an Avenger. To be fair,
And talk about speculative market. I bought so many issues of that #1.
Oh, well, there you go. And then he launched Breakout, which has like one of my absolute favorite opening scenes of all time when it's Electro like getting ready to blow up the raft, and he's like, costume on or off? And he's like, it's up to you. And he's like, costume on. Like, that moment, I was like, I'm so into this. And that relaunched Avengers in like a huge way, and I don't think we would have the movie without that series.
Two other characters, real quick, that have had basically their characters completely changed after this series. Everybody has used these characterizations. Machine Man and Elsa Bloodstone after
Yeah.
Next Wave.
Yep.
and
Warren
Monica
Ellis basically
Rambeau.
like completely reinvented those characters. Yeah, even Monica Rambeau.
Like, this is the Monica Rambeau in Captain Marvel is not fucking Photon. It's Next Wave Monica Rambeau.
Yeah, she's still wearing the
full of-
outfit.
When
Yeah.
Elsa Bloodstone's brother shows up in Avengers Arena, like, it's very much because of the Elsa Bloodstone character that they created in Next Wave. So,
Yeah.
Another example would be Green Arrow.
yeah, I was gonna say.
Until his death, he really wasn't the character that he was at one point, and
Yeah.
then Kevin Smith bringing him back reinvigorated the character in a much better way that we didn't really see with Kevin Smith's run, but Judd Winnick
Right.
brought it out.
Same with
Fred Metzler too.
Guardian
Yes.
Devil with Daredevil. Like,
Yeah, no, I
Smith wrote the beginning, but it wasn't until like, people took over, which was Bendis and Malieve, I think.
Yes.
Eventually, it took like 10 issues or so before they came on.
Yeah, like Daredevil's a good example in my mind. Like right now, when we clearly there's enough stuff that they've been able to do with him to make him interesting and compelling. But my feelings wouldn't be hurt if they came, if Wade was like, I'm done, and then they were just kind of like, well, you know what? No one around has an awesome Daredevil story to tell, so we're not going to really bring him up much.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe more now. I mean, yeah.
Seriously prefer that than somebody come up and try and tell Frank Miller's Daredevil again.
Yeah.
Well,
so
or
fucking
even
tired.
But we
just
haven't
rehash-
heard that story.
Or even
where
just
Daredevil is angsty and bad things happen to him and he gets the shit kicked out of him.
Well, I don't want someone to come in and rehash Mark Waid's Daredevil.
No,
again,
absolutely not.
and that's what I love about the new Iron Fist series is like Iron Fist kind of got taken off the table for a while, and then when I cannot remember the name of the writer for the life of me right now, but whoever's writing Iron Fist: The Living Weapon right now, or Immortal Weapon.
Yeah, I don't remember
is-
either, which I don't feel like an issue's come out in a while.
I talked about it on Top of Stack probably 3 weeks ago.
Maybe I missed an issue.
Is an absolutely fucking phenomenal series and is completely different than any Iron Fist thing I've ever seen before. And it's because like he had a specific goal in mind that I think that series works so well.
Okay.
Hiroja also had a question.
Yes, what was that?
It was, how do you feel about the lack of a love interest for Carol Danvers in the series? It was like, how important is it that she doesn't have
Yeah, not at
Oh.
all. I think that having a romantic subplot is always extraneous. Like, it's cool if like that's part of the story that you want to tell, but if you're just like, well, there has to be a love interest because there has to be a love interest, like, why are you telling that story?
It's gratuitous and stupid.
Batman Begins.
Yeah.
But, like, that movie does not need a love interest in it at all to be successful, and I think that the series is perfectly successful without a love
Let's
interest.
be specific. That movie didn't need fucking Katie Holmes in it.
Well,
at all,
no,
man.
I mean, but she's there to be the love interest.
Yeah,
like,
no.
her character, she doesn't do anything but go, Bruce. Like, literally, like, she's...
Wow. I thought she was here.
Yeah.
And you did that.
That's what she sounds like to me. But, I mean, like, that character is irrelevant, and that's what so many... I think kind of what you're saying, I guess, with the, like, it can be nice is, like, if you have two characters in a book and they're both very important and cool and they have their own goals and their own decisions and they're after their own shit, but at some point there happens to be, like, a romantic subplot between those two characters, aka, like, the X-Files or something without as much on again, off again, will they, won't they? And like that is interesting because like you have two well-formed characters that decide that this is going to be a romantic thing. But if you have one character that the book is about, like Carol Danvers, and then all of a sudden some other jackass shows up with no goals and no redeeming qualities and is just there to look hot, and for Carol to go, I wonder if he likes me. Like I find that so not interesting.
What if she met a
well,
guy
like-
named Trevor Stevens?
Ravine, which we just talked about.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a burgeoning relationship between the two main characters.
Exactly.
Like, that's interesting. It's part of the story. Counterpoint, Ultimate Spider-Man. All the stuff with Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy
I like
and
you.
Peter and
I
who's
don't
he going
like
to go
you.
with and
I
all
like
that
you.
stuff. Like, okay, great. It doesn't contribute to the story. Like, it's a complete B-plot, and if you chop all of that stuff out, it doesn't necessarily change the story.
And what I liked about what they did with Gwen Stacy for so long is like she's not a romantic interest
Right.
to Peter. She's an interesting character in her own right. She lives with them. She's like a sister. Like Aunt May loves her and takes care of her. She becomes Carnage on accident. But like
It seems like
but
that there's
then-
a tendency to force a romantic subplot when one is not called for.
Well, I
Agreed.
think that's, and I think that you get into this weird thing where, like, for some characters, it's sort of expected, which is why, like, Spider-Man tends to always have like love life problems,
yeah.
But like that's why I like it. It's like Carol Danvers doesn't seem to care and doesn't need it right now. And if some point somebody comes up with a story to do it, great. But that's like the one argument I can make for like removing Lois Lane from Superman, is that it's kind of like, I get it, we've gone there. That's his wife. Now, I don't agree with the opposite, which is what DC Comics did, which is like, no one should be married because no one's life should be that
Right.
not good.
And that's the thing, is that I think the Wonder Woman thing was counterproductive because, like, Superman has done the, like, are they going to get married? Like, are they even dating thing for so long?
right.
And they've, like, finally put that behind them.
To turn around and do it with somebody else.
But then Lois Lane provides a very important tether for Clark as a character. Like, she is the one human that he loves above all others. Like, even if the world as a whole hated him, he still had her. Like, she was a connection for him. And when you take that away, like, I think that he loses something, especially to then turn around and have him dating Wonder Woman.
Yeah, well, I think that's true if you have him dating Wonder Woman. I would make the argument that you could take the issue with Lois Lane, which I think tends to be kind of a very old-fashioned, like, the only way a man will really care about the world is if he finds his one beautiful princess to love for all time. That's kind of bullshit. Like, if he had, like, 13 friends that meant all the world to him, not only would that make more sense for why he's basically everywhere on the planet constantly, like, God, Jimmy Olsen constantly getting into trouble, but apparently Clark really, or Superman really likes him for some god-awful reason.
If you're going to break him up with Lois, put him together with Jimmy.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that I don't think that romantic love has to be a component.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's like, untether him from the whole Lois Lane thing, and he can have other complex human relationships that keep him tethered to humanity. At the same time, like, there was a lot of good build to Batwoman getting married.
Yeah.
Why not give that to her? It would actually make her continue to make her unique among the Bat family for a reason that's not just like lesbian, snicker, but like,
well, and again, it's a parallel to Earth 2 Batman, who is married and has a kid and is happy, and the Batman of Earth 1 going like, you can't be a Bat family member and be happy,
right?
And then the Batwoman, who's essentially always flown in the face of everything that Bruce says, is like, no, you're just doing it wrong, Bruce. Like, look at how much better I am at this than you. And I mean, that didn't happen because Dan doesn't want us to have nice things. But I agree with you. Like, I think that it has its place in some stuff.
Yeah, just like I think that if Batman and Wonder Woman had eventually ended up together, that had been such a simmering tension that was well executed in the DC universe for the better part of a decade that would have felt legitimate. Like,
well, same with Bruce and Catwoman though. Like, how long are they going to be on?
Exactly.
Right?
So then to reboot it and have them like sex on a rooftop is like, really? He's like trained with martial arts masters, but he can't keep his fucking pants on because Catwoman walks by. But Judd Winnick has gone out and said, like, this is not my.
Who could really?
Right.
With that purple outfit and the big frizzy hair and that tail.
Yep.
Clearly. So yeah. Anyway, my romantic leads are only necessary or not necessary. Period. They are there if they're good. If not, then you have other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
human tales and relationships that you can explore.
Like, as a character, I think Carol Danvers really works not having that romantic subplot, especially because she's a female hero.
Flip side, I do think it's important that characters have strong relationships with people that they love.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I want to see more Jessica Drew, Carol Danvers
as
a platonic friendship, because I think that is 1,000 times more interesting to see women be friends with one another, and not just women. I want to see more male characters be friends with one another. Like, I want Bruce and Clark back, like super best friends, because that platonic relationship that those characters have is so important.
And I'm going to say this in general.
I want
there needs
Spider-Man
to be
Human Torch back.
Yeah, fair.
There needs to be a new Dakota North series, because there is not enough Dakota North in comic books.
I don't even know who that is.
She's the girl who shows up to help Carol train on the flying motorcycle. She had a series back in the 80s. She's a private detective. She was going to have it was going to be like a TV series tie-in, but the TV series never happened. So Marvel just has this character, and she keeps showing up as like a friend. Like, I think she's showed up in Daredevil. She was working with him for a while. Like, she shows up in different places. My mom had the mini series when I was a kid.
She and Patsy Walker should team up and have a detective agency together, and I would read the shit out of that.
That would be awesome.
Oh, I was going to say, a good example of one that has built over time that has been handled relatively well when it's brought up is Bendis started to very slowly insert a friendship between Peter Parker and Logan, where like Parker will make these asinine comments to him and Logan's just kind of like, meh, like Logan treats him almost the same way he treated like Kitty Pryde,
Jubilee,
and Jubilee, where he just is kind of like, you're such a dumbass, but okay, like. I love that. Like, those things, I think that the acknowledging the human element of relationships makes those stories feel more real, makes those characters feel more dynamic.
I mean, like, the whole, like, sexuality aspect of romantic relationships, I think, is important with certain characters to be like, oh, we need characters like Batwoman that represent, like, gay, lesbian relationships and stuff like that. But I also feel like on the flip side of that, we need relationships where characters love one another, where it isn't just like, these genitals go with these genitals. Like, there's lots of different forms of love.
It's that you need to have those strong human connections, And throwing in a romantic subplot is a cheap and easy way to do
Yeah.
that. It's just like, oh, we need to give this character some grounding. Subplot, romance, this.
Yeah.
But then you also have to think about there is actually another opposite. There's like multiple opposites here because part of Tony Stark's character is the womanizer, different woman every week kind of thing. Like when it's written into his character that there's romantic.
Although funny enough,
things.
I don't know what his status is right now because I haven't been keeping up with Iron Man. But for a while there, he was like the single most monogamous character in all of Marvel because he'd been with Pepper finally.
Yeah, he got his brain reversed.
Okay, good.
Good. Yes,
Like
good.
that, not good for that, but like
Yeah,
he's off the wagon. He's drinking again.
He's got
sleeping
a
with
silver
women.
suit. He's banging the Beetle. I don't know.
excellent,
Kinds of stuff.
excellent.
Yeah.
So, recommendations?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I think we got all the listener questions, right?
Yeah, there might have been one other, but
We apologize if we missed one. Keep sending them. We love talking about listener questions. So
But we're
thanks.
not going to be damned to
Absolutely.
actually look up and make sure that we've listened to yours.
Wait, do we address the one about space or Earth?
Oh, no. Thor, I forgot. Longtime founding member of View from the Gutters who hasn't been on an episode since, I believe, episode 4.
I assume he's been dead
He has been.
and finally just came back.
So from Beyond the Grave, Thor Oxdal, he
He asked if the Captain Marvel movie should be set on Earth or space or both.
Clearly, the answer is both.
Yeah,
Both.
Both.
I think it would be
Yes.
hard to do it if you didn't put some of it in space, because, like, how do you explain
Yeah.
her powers and stuff? But
Yeah.
also, like, Guardians was so cool to just see what Marvel Cosmic looks like that I want more
Well,
of
Captain
that.
Well,
Marvel's the
that's-
perfect bridge.
Yeah.
The thing that I want is more of those space backdrops from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Like, those were gorgeous. Those
Yeah.
were amazing, and I want as much of that in all of my Marvel movies as I can possibly
And you
get.
already have in the Marvel movies, we know who the Kree are thanks to Guardians of the Galaxy, and so we already have some insight into her origin that hasn't been told yet.
Yeah.
And if they're going to be pushing the whole Inhuman thing, then that fits in with the Kree as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of hook points where those all fit together.
Agreed. Okay, now I think we've gotten all the listener
All
questions.
Yes.
right. Recommendations.
Joe.
Pass.
So, at first, I would like to say that it occurs to me we have an even number of people here, so a tie is actually possible.
I always break the tie. Like, we often have an even number.
Yeah, I
of
thought that
people
was
here.
part of the whole
That's why I vote last.
regulation
Yeah.
chart is always.
So,
But see, I think other people should be tiebreakers sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they are.
Yeah, because they vote before chart.
I'm going to pitch something I pitched several times before, but I feel like it's a proper time now because Netflix just released the full trailer for the Daredevil miniseries that's coming up. And in the trailer, he is wearing the costume from Frank Miller's The Man Without Fear. So I'm going to pitch The Man Without Fear. I'm not going to fucking pitch it again because I've seriously pitched it like 3 times. It's an origin story.
Hey,
it's Frank Miller and John Romita
pitched it
Jr.
2 weeks ago.
You
I
did
pitched
pitch it
it-
like 2 weeks ago.
I've pitched Atomic Rebel like 5 times. I'm still going to endure. I will win one day.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
don't
just,
worry, we got
I'm just saying.
Persevere.
I'm just saying
I
that,
have
like,
a guff with you about Atomic Robo, by the way. We'll get to that later.
Go.
so yeah.
Really?
Origin
I didn't write
story,
it.
Frank Miller,
Just think
John
it's
Romita
good.
Jr. I think Klaus Janson does the inks. It's a great fucking story. It's 4 issues, and it's a perfect time to read it because I have a feeling it's going to set up the Daredevil miniseries very nicely.
Matt Murdock wears sweatpants.
Matt Murdock is fucking awesome.
And wears sweatpants.
And wears
Those are
sweatpants.
not mutually
And
exclusive.
this fucking great,
As
like,
someone who wears
pirate- yeah,
sweatpants
it's-
a lot, like, that's not mutually.
It's
I don't
like
wear
grade. It's like a pirate's cap, but he pulls it down over his eyes, and there's no eye holes because he's fucking Daredevil. He doesn't need fucking eye holes. Fuck your eye holes. Those are for normal superheroes,
Wait,
not Daredevil.
question though, isn't he supposed to pretend that he can see stuff? Like, isn't that the whole deal? So, like, when
yes.
they see him with the pirate mask with no eye holes, they're like, what is this guy doing? He doesn't have eyes?
Well, he's attacking in the dark, I think. But anyways,
Whatever.
it's there. I mean, we've been over this. Sometimes his suit has eye holes, sometimes it doesn't. So
Joe and I had a long-running argument about that.
yeah,
Apparently, he has both kinds.
yes.
Yeah.
So, Kate,
In a rare double whammy decision, we were both right.
Or both wrong.
Well, yeah.
Which is usually the case, though not rare.
So,
Kate.
Kate,
All right, so I'm bringing a book. I recently watched the movie Snowpiercer, and I wanted to read the book that it was based on. So I'm pitching Snowpiercer.
Sweet.
It's the English version is 2 volumes, but I can't seem to find the second one, so I'm not sure what to pitch. The first one is easily found. But if both are out and easily obtainable, I'd like to read both of them.
Sweet.
But anyways, it's a story about the end of the world because the world freezes and there's a train.
Volume 2 is available on Amazon.
Okay. There's a train that the last of humankind lives on because the train was built special so that it can survive the elements. And it has a weird class system on the train, and there's an uprising, and the book is different than the movie, and I don't really know how so because I haven't read it yet, but I would really like to read it and talk about it, and so that's my pitch.
Cool.
Very
Brand.
cool.
I want to pitch volumes 1 and 2 of Fables by Bill Willingham.
Oh, the bad
Legends in
stuff.
Exile and Animal Farm. But yeah, basically there's a place in New York where the fables of old fairy tales live and shenanigans happen. And I recently just reread the first 2 volumes because I really like this series. And I want to make Toby angry or give him an opportunity to vent his anger in a public forum.
I actually like the really early stuff. Those 2 volumes you mentioned are pretty good.
Yeah. So
those are what I call Fables the bad trades, volumes 1, 2, and part of 3.
really,
Yeah, I didn't like
And
the
yet,
series until
Tobias just
4.
gave it a glowing recommendation.
As
Yeah.
always, Chard and I cannot agree.
Wow.
So yeah.
that's
So anyway,
obvious.
apparently divisive. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a series that has good long-term arcs, but also does well with some short-term stuff. I think these 2 trades have a lot to say. I like the art, and it's a little bit of a different flavor than some of the stuff we've been reading. So I thought it was a good time.
I enjoy them.
Cool beans. Kaylee?
Okay, so real quick, my guff with Atomic Robo. You vastly undersold the amount of punching of Nazis that went on in that comic.
Yeah.
Because I started reading it, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. This is everything I want in a comic.
Well, okay.
And-
To be fair, my pitch 4 or 5, I had basically just said Atomic Robo. But the first time I said it, I did talk up the punching of Nazis.
Okay,
So you may just
maybe-
not have been present for the more elaborate pitches.
Okay, that may be fair.
But yes, lots of Nazi punching until we get to dinosaurs, and then
And then there's lots of punching dinosaurs, which I am also a fan of.
Yeah.
Fair.
just love the light.
So I am bringing, because we just talked about Captain Marvel, I am bringing Pretty Deadly, which is Kelly Sue DeConnick, Emma Rios, and Jordie Bellaire. It is a Western that follows the story of Death-Faced Ginny, and I love it. I think the art is fantastic, and everybody's stealing my comics right out of my lap.
That's your fault for leaving them out.
Apparently. I think it's great. The art is gorgeous. The storyline is fantastic. I think it's a great departure from what a lot of comics tend to do with like this very formulaic set of actions, and I think it reads fantastically. The story is unique. It is interesting, and it's just generally really great.
Question: is it an ongoing series?
Okay, so the first trade came out. A second trade is soon to come out. I believe. I have not read it, but it's supposed to be focusing on a slightly different aspect of the same universe, or so I've been told.
So the reason I grabbed Captain Marvel out of your lap is because it reminded me that she has short hair on all the covers and long hair in all the issues,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which annoyed the crap out of me.
Yes, I agree.
Although she has the haircut later on.
But only for a little bit, because she's back to the long hair again.
Is she?
Pretty sure.
Maybe part of her superpowers is that she can't keep her hair short.
Maybe.
She's
like Gambit, and it's just like all over
So-
the fucking place all the time.
I had a lot of problems with this book. And so I'm going to pitch a book that came out the year after it that does some of the same stuff, but I really, really like. So I'm going to pitch Journey into Mystery, featuring Sif, volumes 1 and 2. by Catherine Immerman and Valerio Schiti. And this is right after what's his butt? Kieran Gillen left Journey into Mystery at the end of the Kid Loki arc. They did 10 more issues with Sif as the star of the book. And this is right after Surtur has tried to escape Muspelheim, the fiery Asgardian place, for like the 10th time, and he's just burned the crap out of the 9 realms. And Sif goes, Asgard just got the shit kicked out of it, like it did last year, and the year before that, kind of tired of getting the shit kicked out of us. I'm going to go find like the ultimate badass warrior Juju and become a berserker and like be able to defend Asgard from all of its enemies. And she goes out to do that, and bad stuff happens, and also some good stuff, and it's a lot of fun. Beta Ray Bill shows up, and the art is fucking amazing, and it's a great comic about a lady superhero who kicks massive amounts of ass, and I really love it.
Sweet.
So that's my pitch.
I'm bringing an Image book that came out 2 days ago as of the recording of this. So the trade paperback just released finally. And this is a book that I know no one's going to vote for, but I think all of you should read because it solves a lot of the problems that you guys have, or it shows a lot of the growth of this writer who you guys find problematic. This is Mark Millar's Starlight. And something that we complain about with Mark Millar a lot is well, I know you don't have a problem, Brent. You can say that out loud if you want.
No.
So we talk a lot about the Millerization of characters, and that like they just become like asshole-ish, and like it's violence for violence sake, like what we have in Kick-Ass and stuff. And this is a story that's not violent really at all, and is a new character, but it is a play off this kind of character trope. So essentially this guy, that was a loud beep. This guy went into space. He was a pilot, I believe. He got flown up into space and landed on this alien world and defeated this alien warlord and like was the hero of the world, and they erected statues in his name, and he was like, I'm so happy to have helped, like free your world and liberate your people, but I have to go home now because I miss my wife, who I love very much. And so he goes back home, and no one knows that he did any of this hero stuff, and everyone thinks he's kind of crazy. And so this is kind of like the Flash Gordon or
Adam Strange,
like post the Flash Gordon adventure. And he's like, my kids think I'm crazy, my wife is dead now, no one respects me, like I'm just a washed up old man, and I have no, like nothing really keeps me going anymore. And there's a lot of quiet moments. There's a lot of like internal struggle, but basically this kid shows up at his door from that planet, is like, hey, bunch of shit went wrong. Come, you're the hero of our world. Like, come help us save this. And so he, as an old man, decides to go back to that planet and help it another time. And I think the art's very classic. It's got this like thin line weight feel. It's very much of that kind of style. So it's not at all Millar-esque. And I find it to be really good. Like, I was so pleasantly surprised with this series. It has nothing to do with superheroes. It's a great, fun sci-fi adventure story. And if you like stuff like Flash Gordon, specifically the movie, I think you'll dig this. So read the trade paperback. That's the full story as far as I know. I don't know that he's ever going to go back and reapproach this, but it's not called Volume 1. It's just called Starlight. So
Okay.
Actually, it is called Volume 1.
Is it?
Yep. Oh, no, wait. No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at it's saying Issue 1. It was... Never mind. My mistake.
Yeah, on...
Darn you, Millar World, and your confusing website.
On the Image Comics website, it just says Starlight trade paperback.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To be fair, the Image Comics website is not super good.
I wish you could, Image, if you're listening, which I realize Image isn't an actual entity.
No, it is.
But
it's a hive mind.
Sell the trades on your website. Like,
they do.
No, they don't. I got a bunch of those like trades on the Humble Bundle.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go to Image's website to buy the rest of the series, I have to buy like 24 individual issues at $2.99 each.
That's fair.
And it's like,
I see what you mean.
Sell the damn trades on your website. Like,
Image's website is terrible.
It's awful. I don't
Go into
understand.
Comixology and then buy them, maybe?
I think
But then you have to read them on Comixology.
right, where Image is DRM free. Which means I can read them in my much superior comic book reader that is not the Comixology comic reader. Anyway.
Comixology for Windows devices sucks.
Yeah, it's not super great on iDevices either. Like, I don't particularly love it on the iPad.
It's not super great.
Yeah, so this is a $14.99 trade, which means it's not a volume 1 from Image.
Right.
Otherwise, it would be a $9.99.
So one off.
This is the 1 through 5. That's the whole thing. I think it's awesome. Check it out. Joe, what do you want to read this week?
I'm trying to decide what will upset Toby more. If I vote for a Mark Miller book or if I vote for Fables.
Well, he likes that part of
Nothing
Fables.
that you can do will ever upset me, so...
Oh, I know
That
several
is a
things I could do to upset you. I could
No,
I
we're not
could
doing
say
that
something
right now.
and upset. I could drop a cup, say something to you, and upset you before that cup hit the floor.
What power you wield, Joe.
Well, I would already be upset because you dropped the cup.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
no
I mean,
reason.
that would be. I'd probably
You
drop it on
wouldn't
my
even have
foot.
to say anything.
I'm gonna throw everybody a fucking curveball and vote for Starlight.
Cool. Cade?
Okay, I want to vote for Man Without Fear because it's time, but I want to tell Kaylee to bring back Pretty Deadly because I really want to talk about that.
I think we've established that Kaylee has no problems bringing her books back.
Yeah,
Yay.
that's true. I really didn't like Emma Rios' art on Captain Marvel, but when Brent was
art
flipping
in Pretty
through
Deadly
Pretty
is a lot.
Deadly,
Gorgeous.
it looked amazing. So I really am interested in that.
Cool.
But my vote is for Man Without Fear.
Brent?
I like Goran Parlov's art. I want to read Starlight. Bum, 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 bum.
It is. I think it's really good in this series, too.
I want to read Journey into Mystery.
Ooh.
I'm going to vote for Man Without Fear. Gonna cock block
You
the
can't.
Mark
You
Miller.
can't vote for your own book.
Uh,
Are we finally going to read? You have to break the tie, and there's only one. There's only one way you can break it.
yeah.
We can just make another tie.
Yeah.
Vote for mine.
No one voted for Pretty Deadly.
Oh, yeah. No, you just talked about it. Damn it. Fuck.
You could vote for Journey into Mystery.
Right.
force
And then
it.
if I vote for Journey into Mystery, then the show's canceled.
Show's canceled.
So,
Really talk about having some kind of runoff vote system.
no. Tune in next
Well,
week
see,
for...
I feel like we should have.
We should
this
have the
thing
garbage
where
guy
if there
come in
is
and
a
vote.
tie, people can
Oh,
change their vote.
That's what I'm saying.
But only within the two that are
Yeah.
tied, though, because
Yeah.
that's what is that called? It's actually supposed to be the most effective form of voting, runoff votes.
Yeah, instant
that's
runoff.
exactly
That's
what-
literally
That's
what
literally what he
Yeah.
just said.
No, but there's a different name for it.
There is a different name for it. It's the two-pillar voting system or something like that.
Well, there's
I
also
don't
approval
remember.
vote. There's a lot of voting systems.
I don't know. It's up to you guys.
Conversation for a future episode.
I'm totally down to read Man Without Fear because I've never read it, and also with the excitement of the Netflix Marvel series, like I'm totally down to read Daredevil. I have no problem
I'm
with that.
psyched for it.
Had there been a book that I didn't want to read that I was going to have to vote for, I definitely would vote for a revoting system. But at this point, we don't need one, so I'll vote for Man Without Fear.
All right. So next week, Man Without Fear.
Yeah. And thanks for listening, everybody. Keep sending questions, and you can send those to us all weekend, basically. We record Monday nights, so get them to us before Monday night at 8.
Yep.
And thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to Me From the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.